There's an image that's haunted the edges of our collective nightmares for centuries. A figure as tall as the shadows, faceless, arms like spider legs stretching out into the darkness. Known in every corner of the world by different names, feared in every culture for reasons that seem to slip just out of reach. Tonight, we're diving into the twisted history behind Slenderman. A figure who's haunted the alleys of London and the black forests of Europe long before the internet ever gave him a name. Is he one creature or many? Is there something ancient lurking in our stories, hiding behind each faceless, tall figure we claim to see? Keep listening to find out, but only if you dare. Hello, Edward here, and welcome back to the archives. I'm the Global Affairs Officer, responsible for logging and categorizing the uncanny that isn't necessarily a direct threat to His Majesty Britannia. Today, it's damp and grey as usual, with just enough mist settling over East London to remind us that we're never too far from the past in this city. You can practically feel the history seeping through the walls. Now this morning, a new archivist wandered in. I've been asked to babysit the lad, poor thing, though lad might be pushing it. He's 32, fresh-faced but sharp. He's already got level 3 clearance, which surprised me. A bit young for that, usually takes years to earn. But rumour has it he's been fast-tracked over from Westminster. So, you can imagine my interest. Westminster doesn't just hand out level 3 clearances like sweets. If he's here, there's a reason, and I intend to find out what. So there we are, barely introduced, and he asks me one of the most loaded questions I've had in a while. Edward, he says, what's the story behind the Slender Man? I looked at him for a good minute, maybe 2. Now, it's not unusual for someone new to ask about the Slender Man. He's one of those names that circulates even among the skeptics. But hearing it from this fresh recruit, just a couple of hours into the job, it had me intrigued. It told me he was either very curious or a touch reckless. Well, dear listeners, tonight we're going to pull back the curtain on the Slender Man. Not the internet's version, the real story. The one that lives in dusty archives and in the whispered legends of places far older than London. I've logged more accounts than I can count of faceless watchers, impossibly tall men, and silent shadows that haunt the boundaries between our world and something else. Shall we? Now, let's start with an account from 1721, deep in East Anglia. This one's lodged in Section Delta 3, Cursed Earth and Haunted Lands. I found it years ago, hidden between papers marked irrelevant by some past archivist who clearly didn't see the patterns. It's from a young woman named Mary Ashcroft, who claimed to have seen a figure near the edge of her village, standing just where the dark of the forest began. Now, this wasn't just some traveller passing through. Mary described the figure as impossibly tall, too thin to be any man, with no face to speak of. But the part that always gets me, the detail that stays with you, is how she said it was staring at her. No eyes, no face, but she swore up and down it was looking right through her. Most of the villagers dismissed her, naturally. It was 1721 after all, and women's tales were often chalked up to hysteria, as if fear was something unique to the feminine mind. But over the years, more accounts popped up, scattered across different villages. Each report described something eerily similar. A figure at the edge of town, standing silent and still, just watching. No one could say what it wanted, only that it was there. That's the thing about these stories. The Slender Man, as he's called now, didn't start on the internet. No, he's always been there, lurking in our old myths and fears, taking whatever form each age offers him. Fast forward a bit to London, 1887, and we get a strange report from a man named Charles Bradley. Now, Bradley was a physician, but he had a peculiar interest in the occult, as many of that era did. It was a foggy night in Whitechapel, perfectly cliched, I know, but bear with me. Bradley was on his way home from an inn when he spotted a tall figure standing beneath a gas lamp, half obscured by the fog. No face, or not one he could discern, but a presence that he later described as scrutinizing him, as though he were being measured by something inhuman. Now, here's where it gets chilling. Bradley said he felt an overwhelming sense that this figure was peering into the darkest corners of his mind. Can you imagine that? Just some faceless figure standing there exposing you to yourself? Bradley didn't last long after that. He died a week later, Suicide, they said, though the details remain murky. But what he left behind is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. His journal, which I keep in a locked case, is filled with frantic, obsessive sketches. Over and over, he drew that faceless figure, tall and silent, just out of reach. Sometimes he added hands, stretched long spider-like, as though trying to touch him from afar. It's a sight I wouldn't recommend for weak nerves. And let's not forget our neighbours across the channel, eh? In France, they call him l'homme des bois, the man of the woods. This figure appears at dusk near the forest's edge, watching, waiting. In Germany, he goes by Der Grossmann, a figure that haunts the Black Forest, reminding children to stay close to their fires at night. They say he punishes those who dare to defy nature's rules, those who wander too far into the woods after dark. Here's the thing, though. These older versions of the Slender Man, they aren't as single-minded as the creature we talk about today. They aren't malevolent by nature, nor exactly benign. They're like guardians, or maybe more like boundaries themselves, marking the edge of our world and something else entirely. They remind us of limits we're better off not testing. Then we come to London during the war, 1944, a particularly dark time for everyone. Bombs dropping, lives changing in an instant. That's when a young girl named Elsie reported seeing something near the ruins of her house, which had been hit during an air raid. She was trapped under debris, unable to move, and in that darkness, she saw it. A figure standing in the rubble, impossibly tall and thin, arms stretched out as though trying to comfort her, but each movement seemed to fracture the air around it, as if merely existing here was painful. She lived to tell the tale, but was never quite the same after. Until her dying day, Elsie swore she'd seen something real, something that wasn't human but wasn't a ghost either. So is Slenderman real? I paused, letting the question echo. In a sense, yes, but not in the way people think. He's real like fear is real, like stories are real when we give them enough weight. These figures, these faceless watchers, they aren't single beings. They're manifestations of something old, older than any name or shape we give them. They are drawn to fear, to the times when our world feels fragile. I know, it sounds fantastical, but after decades cataloguing these cases, reading through the whispered testimonies and fevered sketches, I've learned something. These figures, whatever they are, aren't solitary. The Slender Man is only one of many masks, one form among countless others. So next time you're out alone and you feel something watching from the shadows, remember, it may just be the Slender Man, or one of his kin. And they're never as far as you think.